Hi there, it's Nicole for Simon Says Stamp, and today I'm sharing a card created with the Dancing Fruits stamp set and some Distress Oxide inks with the rock and roll technique, which gives you two colors of ink on a solid stamped image that instantly gives your images some depth and interest. This is going to create some awesome multicolored stamped images. I'm going to start with the lemon, and I'm going to ink it up first with my lighter of the two colors, in this case Fossilized Amber. I'm going to roll on a little Wild Honey ink and then stamp that. Now, I accidentally had mine upside down. I want the darker color on the bottom. So I'm going to flip over my paper and do it again. I did not clean my ink off. I went ahead and inked it up again with Fossilized Amber, rolled on a little Wild Honey, and then stamped the image again. These images all have fun summer themed sayings in them, so it's going to really be a fun, interesting background. The great thing about these Distress Oxide inks, and the reason they work so well for this technique, is because they have pigment ink in them. This technique really works the best, in my opinion, with pigment ink. You can definitely do it with dye ink as well, but I think pigment ink is so forgiving. For the leaves, I've used a little peeled paint and Lucky Clover, breaking out some of the newly released Distress Oxide inks in the newer colors. That Wild Honey and Lucky Clover are two of the new ones, and I just absolutely love how this looks. You can see that you can even layer. I've overlapped the leaves over the lemon a little bit, and you're not going to really get a whole lot of bleed through. It's just fantastic. I love how this looks. For the apple, I've stamped it inked it up first with some worn lipstick, and then I'm rolling on the candied apple all the way around. The apple has probably got the least amount of difference in it. You can see it's got that little lighter area, kind of a highlight area. The stem is stamped with Vintage Photo, and then for my leaf, I'm going to use Twisted Citron and Lucky Clover inks to stamp that right there. Now I'm going to copy this over and over all over the background using all four of the solid fruit images from this stamp set. They're kind of like Build-A-Fruit images, and I really love how they looked with multicolored ink on these solid images. You could also use just a single image and repeat it all over. I thought it would be fun to use all four. The pineapple is going to use the same color combination of Fossilized Amber and Wild Honey. So I'll stamp him next. I want to make sure I leave room for his crown, those leaves coming out of the top. For the greenery, I am going to use a combination of peeled paint and Lucky Clover inks. Now, what makes this so easy to switch colors from stamp to stamp, and there's not going to be any staining, pigment ink tends to clean off of stamps for the most part very easily. There isn't cross-contamination or anything like that because it really cleans off, so it just wipes right off, unlike dye inks. So it makes cleanup really fast. I am using a Lawn Fawn chamois to just clean up my stamps in between each image. The pears are a combination of Fossilized Amber and peeled paint. Gives it that nice yellow-green look. And then I want to make sure I stamp off the edge several places and really add a ton of interest and make this look like it came from a bigger piece of paper. We're building a pattern paper background here, so it's not just a single stamped image. I think it would also be fun to stamp these maybe in a row, like a border across a card. A single stamped image would be awesome. Lots and lots of fun ways to use these, but the multiple inks and the rock and roll technique definitely adds that bit of interest and really takes these images up a notch. Just another great way that Distress Oxides are fantastic and do some different things than your regular Distress inks. Another pineapple, or pear rather. And you could use any colors you wanted to build these images. I kind of tried to go with fairly traditional colors, tried to get them as close to actual fruit images as possible. Just love how these look with these inks. I'm going to finish stamping all of these. I want to make sure, like I said, I fill in some areas along the edges with white space so that there's plenty of fruit happening everywhere. Along the right side, that apple I just stamped a second ago, I did forget to stamp the stem until I was going to photograph the project. I had finished everything about the card and I was going to photograph the project and I was like, uh-oh, where's the stem and the leaf? So I had to go back and stamp those later. And so you'll see that in the finished photos of the card that the apple does indeed have its stem and the leaf. One of those things where when you're stamping and in the moment, you don't notice it. And then if you walk away and come back a little bit later, I came back a whole day later before I photographed the project and I was like, oh my gosh, how did I miss that? Add a little greenery there. Maybe add even something down there in that bottom left corner. I think it needs just a little something. Roll on just a little bit for that pear. I can add a stem and finish that all off. The vintage photo is a great color for stems. Once that is all done, I want to take the thanks script or script thanks dies, and this is a stamp set that has not only the scripty type of word, but the outline as well. And I'm going to die cut the background 3 times from white cardstock and the actual word from black cardstock once. Then I'm going to take a scrap of black cardstock and stamp a greeting from the Thoughtful Messages stamp set. And I originally thought I would stamp the word friend behind it, but it just wasn't working out. So I'm going to just stamp for everything. This is from Thoughtful Messages. Stamp that with Versamark ink, sprinkle on white embossing powder, and then heat set that. And that trim that into a little thin strip, and that's going to finish off my greeting. So my greeting will read, "Thanks for everything." Going to cut that into a thin little strip. Just something I can tuck underneath the die cut greeting. So here's all those die cuts I've got, and those are the dies I just used. And I'm going to stack up the background one on top of another. This is going to give it a little dimension and help it pop up. You could also die cut this from Fun Foam if you wanted to, and that'll give it some nice dimension as well. Make sure and pop out the insides of any of the letters. And then I'm going to put little dabs of glue on the back of the scripty thanks. Pop that right in the center. That outline is just such a fun, neat technique. I really love all these dies that have the little background like that. It just helps the word really pop off of whatever you're placing it on. I'm going to put this panel directly on a white top fold card base. Go ahead and glue the scripty word kind of in the upper half of the card and then place my little phrase underneath this. And I want it to be partially tucked underneath the word, but you don't want it to be covered up. And I want it to be lined up perfectly. So I'll fiddle with that a little bit till I get it right where I want it to go. Then I'm going to take some Nuvo crystal drops in ebony black and create some of my own enamel dots scattered throughout the design in different sizes. The black kind of picks up the black from the die cut word as well as the background for the rest of the sentiment. And scatter these all over. I like to do them in groups of 2 or 3. If any of them have a little bit of a tip on them, they don't flatten out real well, you can always tap the back of your paper. That will help them flatten out a little bit. Go ahead and add just a few more here and there. You will want to let these sit and dry completely for probably at least 24 hours or so before you try to mail a card like this. That way the enamel dots are really good and hard, and they're not going to get smushed when you try to mail them. Once that's done, my card is all finished. Thanks for joining me today for this rock and roll technique card featuring the Simon Says Stamp Dancing Fruits stamp set. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Simon Says stamps and dies that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.